They told him it would be simple. They said it was just a temporary arrangement. They promised it would change nothing. But when? Ethan opened his door that morning and found a fox-eared visitor from another world standing in his apartment. His quiet life was over. This is not a story about spaceships, battles, or saving the universe. This is the story of an ordinary man and an extraordinary being learning how to survive, hide, trust, and belong in a world that does not understand either of them as secrets grow heavier. Choices become harder, and the line between duty and compassion begins to break. Ethan must decide what truly makes a place feel like home, and how much he is willing to risk to protect it. What begins as an agreement soon becomes a journey of fear, courage, and quiet hope, proving that sometimes the most powerful stories are not about changing the universe, but about protecting one small life within it. Ethan never thought his life would become strange. If anyone had asked him a month earlier, he would have described his days as quiet, tiring, and painfully normal. He lived alone in a small apartment on the third floor of an old building near the edge of the city. The walls were thin, the heater worked only when it felt like it, and the elevator had been broken for so long that everyone stopped complaining. His job at a shipping warehouse paid just enough to cover rent, food, and the phone bill. Some nights he fell asleep in his uniform because he was too tired to care. So when the message arrived on his phone that Tuesday evening, he assumed it was another wrong number. The text said, "Mr. Ethan Cole, this is the Regional Housing Assistance Program. We have reviewed your application from last year and would like to discuss a temporary living arrangement that includes monthly financial support. Please reply if interested." Ethan read it twice. He had applied for help months ago when his rent went up, and he was afraid he would lose the apartment. No one had ever replied. He almost deleted the message, thinking it was a scam, but the name of the office was real. He had seen it on government forms before. He typed back, "Yes, I'm interested." The reply came almost instantly. "Good. A representative will visit tomorrow at 9 a.m. That night, Ethan barely slept. His mind filled with hope and worry. Maybe they were offering cheaper housing. Maybe a roommate. Maybe something complicated he would regret. Still, any help sounded better than nothing. At exactly 9 the next morning, there was a knock. Two people stood outside his door. A man in a gray coat holding a tablet and a woman with short hair and sharp eyes. They introduced themselves, spoke politely, and asked if they could come in. Their voices were calm, professional, almost too smooth. They explained that a special temporary housing program needed volunteers. Participants would host a non-traditional resident for a short time. The pay would be generous. The conditions were simple. Privacy was important. Questions were discouraged. Ethan blinked. Non-traditional resident? The woman smiled. You could call it that. They placed a document on his table. The number at the bottom caught his attention. It was more money than he made in 2 months. "Is this legal?" he asked. "Completely," the man replied. "You won't be in danger. The situation is safe. You just need to provide a place to stay." Ethan looked around his apartment. 1 bedroom, a couch that squeaked, a small kitchen that always smelled faintly of coffee and soap. He thought about overdue bills on his fridge. He thought about how tired he was of worrying. "Okay," he said. They nodded. "Good. The resident will arrive tomorrow morning." After they left, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, trying to imagine what kind of person would come. A foreign student? A scientist? Someone who talked too much? Someone who never spoke at all? None of his guesses came close. The next morning, he stood by his window as a large dark van parked outside the building. 2 figures stepped out. Then a third. Ethan's heart stopped. The figure was small, barely taller than his chest, wrapped in a pale cloak. The hood shifted, and he saw them. Soft pointed ears, covered in silver-white fur, rising clearly above the head. The light caught on strange eyes that reflected gold. Ethan backed away from the window. A knock came at the door. When he opened it, the same 2 officials stood there, calm as always. Between them was the figure from outside. The hood fell back, revealing a face that was almost human, but not quite. Smooth skin with a faint shimmer, a nose just a little too delicate. Those ears unmistakably fox-like, twitching as they listened to everything. "This is Luma," the woman said. "She will be staying with you." Ethan couldn't speak. Luma looked up at him. Her eyes studied his face with careful focus, as if memorizing it. Then she spoke in slow, careful English. "You are my human." Ethan swallowed. "I guess I am." The officials went over the rules quickly. No photos, no visitors, no social media, no telling anyone. Monthly payments would arrive on time. A weekly check-in would occur. "Living with her will be simple," the man said. Then they left. Ethan stood there with the door closed, the silence heavy in the room. Luma remained still, holding the edges of her cloak. Her ears flicked at the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of a car outside, the creak of the building. Finally, Ethan said, "Do you want to sit?" She nodded quickly and moved to the couch. She touched the fabric, curious, then sat carefully, as if the furniture might disappear. He brought her a glass of water. She stared at it for a long moment before taking a sip. Her ears twitched again. "Is it okay?" he asked. "Cold," she said. Then, after thinking good, they spent the next hour mostly in silence. Ethan tried not to stare. Luma tried to understand everything at once. She studied the clock, the window, his shoes, a plant he had forgotten to water. Finally, she pointed at the small television. "Lightbox?" "TV," he said. He turned it on. The sudden noise made her flinch. Then she laughed softly, a sound like wind through leaves. By evening, Ethan realized his heart had not slowed down since morning. His mind raced with questions he was not supposed to ask. Where did she come from? Why him? How could anyone think this was simple? He gave her his bedroom and took the couch. Before sleeping, he heard her voice from the doorway. "Ethan?" "Yeah." "Thank you." For home, he lay awake long after the lights went out, staring at the ceiling, understanding one clear truth. Nothing about this would ever be simple. The first week with Luma in the apartment felt longer than the entire year before it. At the beginning, Ethan tried to believe the officials. He repeated their words in his mind whenever things felt strange. Living with her will be simple. He told himself that while brushing his teeth, while walking to work, while counting coins for groceries. But each day proved them more wrong. They had left a printed list of rules on his kitchen table. He read them every morning like a reminder of how careful he had to be. No visitors. No photographs. No recordings. No talking about her. Keep curtains closed at night. Report any unusual contact. Weekly check-ins required. Luma tried very hard to follow the rules. She stayed inside, watched everything Ethan did, and copied him with quiet attention. When he brushed his hair, she brushed hers. When he made coffee, she smelled it like it was a puzzle. She learned how doors worked, how lights turned on, how water flowed from the sink. But the world was too new for her to understand all at once. She didn't sleep at night. The first time Ethan noticed, it was nearly 2 a.m. He woke to soft footsteps moving across the floor. He opened his eyes and saw her sitting on the couch, staring at the window. The moonlight reflected in her golden eyes. "Luma," he whispered. She turned slowly. "The sky is loud." He listened. Everything sounded normal to him. A passing car. Whined through the alley. Distant sirens. "It's always like that," he said. She nodded, though she didn't look convinced. After that, he found her awake almost every night. Sometimes she sat by the window. Sometimes she sat on the floor, arranging objects in careful patterns. Once he woke up and found all the books on his shelf stacked in a perfect circle. She also struggled with food. On the first evening, Ethan made pasta. He placed a plate in front of her and handed her a fork. She held it like a strange tool and stared at the noodles as if they might escape. "You twist it," he explained. She tried. The noodles fell off. She tried again. This time she succeeded. She tasted it and froze. Her ears slowly lifted. "This is warm happiness," she said. Ethan laughed, surprised by the words. "Yeah, I guess so." She ate 3 plates. But other foods confused her. Bread was too quiet. Soda made her ears buzz. Ice cream made her shiver and laugh at the same time. She also didn't understand showers. The sound of the water frightened her. The steam made her nervous. The floor being wet seemed wrong to her. It took nearly an hour of explaining and gentle encouragement before she stepped inside. When she finally came out, her hair soaked, her ears drooping with water. She smiled in a way that made Ethan's chest feel strange. "This rain box is good," she said. As days passed, the neighbors began to notice things. Mrs. Green from downstairs asked why there were lights on at 3 in the morning. The man across the hall asked about the strange music he sometimes heard, which was actually Luma humming sounds, she said, reminded her of home. Someone complained about shadows moving past the curtains at night. Ethan lied. He said he had trouble sleeping. He said he was working on music. He said the shadows were from his fan. Every lie made his stomach tighten. At work, he became slower, more tired. He worried constantly. He checked his phone every break to make sure Luma hadn't sent a message saying something had gone wrong. When he came home, she would be waiting near the door, eyes lighting up when she saw him. "You returned," she would say, every time, as if surprised. The first official check-in came the following Monday. 2 people stood in the apartment while Luma sat quietly on the couch. They asked if everything was working well, if she was comfortable, if there were any concerns. Ethan said everything was fine. Luma watched him closely while he spoke. After they left, she turned to him and asked, "You did not tell them about the night sky noise?" He shook his head. "They wouldn't understand." She looked down at her hands. "They would take me." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew it was true. Later that evening, he found her sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. Her ears were flat, her eyes dimmer than usual. "Luma," he said softly. She looked up. "If they take me back, I will not see this place again." He sat beside her. "They haven't taken you." "But they will," she said. "They always do." That was the first time she sounded afraid. From that night on, something changed. Luma stayed closer to him. She followed him from room to room. When he cooked, she stood nearby. When he worked on bills, she sat at his feet. When he watched TV, she leaned against his shoulder, studying the faces on the screen. Ethan felt something heavy growing in his chest. He wasn't supposed to care this much. This was supposed to be simple. The second check-in was different. They asked more questions. They looked around more carefully. They asked Luma if she wanted to return. She said no. After they left, a dark vehicle began appearing outside the building some evenings. It never stayed long, but it was always there. Ethan started keeping the curtains closed all the time. One night, he came home to find Luma standing by the door, trembling. "There are eyes outside," she whispered. He looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. He checked the window. The dark vehicle was parked across the street. His heart sank. "Come here," he said, pulling the curtains tighter. "You're safe." "I'm here." She leaned into him, shaking slightly. That night, Ethan realized something he had not allowed himself to think before. This was no longer a temporary arrangement. This was his life now. Ethan could not remember the last time he had felt truly calm. Even during quiet moments, something inside him stayed tense, like a string pulled too tight. The dark vehicle across the street came and went, sometimes for days in a row, sometimes disappearing for a week, only to return again. He never knew when it would be there. He never knew what it meant. Luma noticed everything. She noticed how his shoulders tightened when he checked the window. She noticed how he stopped humming while making coffee. She noticed how he locked the door twice before bed. One evening, as rain tapped against the glass, she spoke the words he had been avoiding. "They are not here for you," she said. "They are here for me." Ethan did not deny it. They sat on the floor with their backs against the couch. The room was dim, lit only by the lamp near the window. Outside, the city moved, unaware of the quiet fear growing inside the small apartment. "Where are you from?" Ethan finally asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "My home is not near," she said. "It is not in this sky." He waited. She placed her hand on the floor, tracing small patterns that looked like stars and lines. My people moved between places. Long ago, our world became too loud, too broken. We had to leave. We searched for quiet places to rest. Earth was quiet until now, Ethan said. She gave a small, sad smile. I was sent because I look the most like you. Because I can listen. Because I am young. What happens if they take you back? She closed her eyes. I will not return here, and I may not return anywhere. Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't fully understand what that meant, but the weight in her voice told him it was not something he wanted her to face. That night he slept poorly, his mind full of the future he had never planned for. The next morning the officials returned without warning. They stood in his kitchen, polite but firm. They asked about Luma's behavior. They asked if she had said anything unusual. They reminded him of the agreement. Ethan answered carefully. He kept his voice steady. Luma watched him. When the door finally closed behind them, she said, You lied. I protected you, he replied. She looked down. That is not safe. Neither is letting them take you. For the first time since meeting her, Luma reached out and took his hand. Ethan froze. Her hand was warm, softer than he expected, her fingers trembling slightly. Thank you, she said. After that, things moved faster. The vehicle outside stayed longer. Sometimes it remained overnight. Sometimes men stood near the corner of the building. Once, someone knocked on the door, claiming to be checking the pipes. Ethan did not open it. Luma grew quieter. She spent more time watching the sky from the small crack between the curtains. Sometimes Ethan would wake and find her standing on the balcony. Ears lifted toward the stars, eyes shining with something he couldn't name. One night, he joined her. Do you miss it? He asked. Yes, she said. But I also fear it. Ah, he nodded. He understood that feeling too well. A few days later, she told him the rest. She explained that her people were scattered, hidden in small groups across different worlds. Earth was not meant to be permanent. It was a place to recover, to breathe, to remain unseen. The humans studying her were not supposed to keep her. They were supposed to protect her. But now, she said quietly, they fear what they do not control. Ethan sat in silence, listening. They think I will bring others, she continued. They think I am a door. Are you? He asked. She shook her head. I am only a child. That was when he realized how alone she truly was. The next check-in never came. Instead, the dark vehicle stayed outside for 3 days straight. On the fourth night, Luma packed. She folded the few clothes he had given her. She placed the little plant from the windowsill into her bag. She tucked in the book he had been reading to her before bed. When Ethan came home from work, he found her standing by the door. I will go, she said. Before they make you hurt? His chest tightened. Where? I will hide, she replied. Like before, shook his head. You don't even know this city. She stepped closer. If I stay, they will take you with me. They stood there in silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. You're not leaving. She looked up at him, surprised. I won't let them take you, he continued, and I won't let you disappear alone. Her ears trembled. Her eyes filled with light. You choose this? She whispered. I do. That night, they turned off every light and sat together on the floor, listening to the quiet. Outside, the vehicle idled. Inside, two people made a promise they didn't yet understand the cost of. The world beyond the apartment was closing in, and there was no turning back. Ethan did not sleep at all that night. Every sound outside the apartment made him tense. A passing car, a door in the hallway, the elevator moving in the building. Luma lay awake on the couch, eyes open, ears flicking at every small noise. When the sun finally rose, the dark vehicle was still there. Ethan made coffee with shaking hands. He tried to act normal, but nothing about the morning felt normal anymore. Luma sat at the table, watching him quietly. They will come today, she said. He didn't ask how she knew. He believed her. Around noon, there was a knock. 2 officials stood in the hallway, this time with another man behind them. His face was serious, his eyes sharp. "We need to speak with you," the woman said. They came inside. The third man stood near the door. "We've noticed unusual patterns," the man said. "Miss Luma's situation has changed." Luma's ears lowered. "She has not done anything," Ethan said. "That is not the issue," the man replied. "The issue is her future." They explained that the program was ending, that Luma would be relocated, that the decision had already been made. Ethan felt the words crash over him. "When?" he asked. "Tonight." Luma's hand tightened on the edge of the table. "You were not supposed to become attached," the woman said quietly. Ethan's voice shook. "She's not a project. She's a person." The man by the door shifted his weight. The room felt smaller, heavier. "Prepare her belongings," the woman said. "We will return this evening." After they left, the apartment felt empty, even though both of them were standing there. Luma slowly turned toward Ethan. "I told you," she said. He walked over and knelt in front of her. "We're not letting this happen." Her eyes searched his face. "How?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But we will." The rest of the afternoon passed in silence. Outside, the vehicle remained. As the sky darkened, Ethan finally spoke. "We leave before they come back." Luma looked at him. Now. They moved quickly but carefully. Luma packed her small bag. Ethan grabbed his wallet, keys, phone. He pulled on a jacket and checked the hallway. Empty. They slipped out, hearts pounding. They walked several blocks before Ethan flagged down a taxi. He told the driver to go anywhere quiet, anywhere far. They ended up near the edge of the city, where trees lined the roads and houses stood far apart. They rented a small room for the night. No questions asked. Inside, Luma finally allowed herself to breathe. "They will search," she said. "I know," Ethan replied. That night, they spoke in whispers. Luma told him about places between worlds, about light that folded space, about doors that were not doors. "I can leave this place," she said, "but not alone, and not without risk." Ethan listened, realizing how much danger she carried simply by existing. At dawn, he made a decision. They would disappear. They would create a story so quiet, so ordinary, that no one would follow it. Over the next 2 days, Ethan canceled his apartment lease. He closed his bank account. He sold his old laptop and phone. He paid everything in cash. He used names no one could trace. They traveled by bus, then by train, then by another bus. Finally, they reached a small town near the mountains where no one knew them. They rented a cabin at the edge of the woods. When the sun set on the third night, Luma stood outside the cabin, staring at the stars. "They will not find us here," she said. Ethan stood beside her, exhausted but calm. "Good," he replied. For the first time in weeks, the world felt quiet again. But somewhere far away, people were still searching. And nothing about the future was certain. Absolutely. Here is part 4, fully expanded. Written in simple English, around 1,300 words, emotionally smooth and engaging, with safe content and no headings. Ethan did not sleep that night. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, while Luma sat on the floor near the window, her ears moving at every sound. Outside, the city was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, as if something was waiting just beyond it. When the sky finally began to change color, the dark vehicle was still parked across the street. Ethan made coffee, even though he didn't want it. His hands shook as he poured the water. Luma watched him without speaking. "They will come today," she said softly. He didn't ask how she knew. He could feel it too. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. Ethan opened it and saw the 2 officials from before, along with another man he had never seen. This man's eyes were hard, his posture stiff, as if he had no patience for explanations. "We need to talk," the woman said. They stepped inside. The third man remained near the door. The room felt suddenly smaller. "We've been observing changes in Miss Luma's behavior," the man said. "This arrangement has gone beyond what was planned." Luma's ears lowered. She did not speak. "What does that mean?" Ethan asked. "It means the program is ending," the woman replied. "She will be moved to another facility." Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. "When?" "Tonight." Luma's hands curled tightly in her lap. You can't just take her, Ethan said. She's not something you own. The man near the door shifted his weight. This is not your decision. Ah. The woman's voice softened slightly. You were warned not to become emotionally involved. Ethan's voice shook. She's a person. She's scared. And she trusts me. There was a long pause. Prepare her belongings, the woman finally said. We will return this evening. When the door closed behind them, the apartment was silent. Luma slowly stood and looked at Ethan. I told you this would happen, she said. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her. We are not letting them take you. Her eyes searched his face. How? I don't know yet, he admitted. But I promise you, you are not going back. For a moment, she didn't move. Then her ears trembled, and she stepped forward, pressing her forehead against his shoulder. I am afraid, she whispered. I am too, he replied. But we will be afraid together. They packed quickly. Luma placed her clothes in the small bag Ethan had bought her, along with the plant from the windowsill and the book he had been reading to her each night. Ethan grabbed his wallet, keys, and jacket. He opened the door slowly and checked the hallway. Empty. They moved quietly down the stairs and out into the street. The dark vehicle was still parked where it had been. The windows were tinted. No one moved inside. They walked fast, not looking back. After several blocks, Ethan stopped a taxi and told the driver to take them anywhere far and quiet. The city slowly fell behind them. Streetlights faded into trees. They rented a small room at the edge of town for the night. No names. Cash only. Inside, the silence felt different. Not heavy, just still. That night, Luma finally spoke of things she had never said before. She told him about her people, about how they traveled between places that humans could not see, about worlds that folded into light, about doors that only some could open. I could leave this world, she said, but it is dangerous, and I cannot return if I do. Ethan listened, realizing that the danger followed her wherever she went. When dawn came, he made his decision. They would disappear. They would become so quiet that no one would think to look for them. Over the next 2 days, Ethan closed his old life. He ended the apartment lease, closed accounts, sold his phone and laptop, paid everything in cash, used names no one could trace. They traveled by bus, then by train, then by another bus. Finally, they reached a small mountain town with wide skies and slow roads. They rented a tiny cabin near the trees. That night, Luma stood outside, looking at the stars. They will not find us here, she said. Ethan stood beside her, tired but calm. For the first time in weeks, the world felt quiet again. But far away, people were still searching, and nothing about the future was certain. Time did not rush anymore. In the quiet mountain town, days moved slowly, as if the world itself had learned to breathe. Ethan woke each morning to soft light coming through the window of the cabin and the sound of birds in the trees. Luma usually woke before him. Sometimes she stood outside, her silver ears catching the wind, her eyes following the clouds as if they were telling her stories. They built a routine. Ethan found work in a small repair shop in town. The owner did not ask many questions, only nodded when Ethan said he needed a job. The work was simple but honest. Fixing tools, replacing parts, carrying boxes. Each evening, Ethan returned to the cabin tired but peaceful. Luma stayed close to the forest. She learned the names of the birds from an old book Ethan found at a yard sale. She watched insects with quiet wonder. She discovered that leaves made different sounds when stepped on. Sometimes she would laugh for no reason at all, as if joy had surprised her. They kept the cabin simple. No internet. No television. Just books, a radio, warm meals, and the slow passing of hours. Months passed. No dark vehicles appeared. No strangers asked questions. No letters arrived. At first, Ethan waited for trouble. He listened for engines at night. He watched the road from the window. But slowly, the tight feeling in his chest faded. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the mountains, Luma spoke. Do you miss your old life? Ethan thought for a long moment. No, he said. She smiled. Neither do I. Sometimes, at night, the sky would glow faintly with colors that did not belong to any sunset. When that happened, Luma would step outside and look up with quiet focus. Are they looking for you? Ethan asked once. Maybe, she replied. Or maybe they are just watching the universe move. He sat beside her. Do you ever want to go back? She hesitated. I want to know where my people are. But this place, this life, it is home. Ethan felt something warm spread through him. The seasons changed. Leaves fell. Snow arrived. Then spring returned. Luma learned how to cook. Not well, but with excitement. She burned the first soup and laughed at the smoke. She learned to knit and made a crooked scarf that she proudly gave to Ethan. He wore it even though it didn't quite fit. Sometimes they walked into town together. People stared at her ears, but no one asked questions. In a place that small, people learned quickly that some things were better left alone. One night, while the stars were bright and the wind was calm, Luma spoke again. If they come, she said, I will not go with them. Ethan looked at her. Then neither will I. She reached out and took his hand. The world had not become simple, but it had become real. And for both of them, that was enough.